Hello, welcome to Shad Life, where I have over 40 years of BMX and mountain biking knowledge, and I like to share it with you awesome people. This video, I'm going to talk about single speeding. I just got done watching a video on the hard party. The hard party? I'm leaving that in here. The hardtail party channel. He was talking about converting his geared bike to a single speed, and it just got me thinking about single speeding. And if you don't know, I was hardcore into single speed mountain biking throughout the mid 2000s. Here are some pictures of me. I talked about this frame before, the On One inbred frame. It was the one with the 23-inch top tube. I was able to run a shorter stem. I rode the crap out of this bike, and I still have that frame hanging on the wall just because why shouldn't I? It's one of my most memorable bikes that I've ever owned. And I could climb, steep rocks. I went out west, rode Fruta, Colorado, rode up in the North Shore. I even went to Whistler with it. Did all kinds of crazy stuff. So some of these pictures are even from Whistler, some are from Fruta, things like that. But I loved it. Like, I just was dedicated to single speeding, and it was cool. And it really worked well for me because coming from a BMX background, I had a really comfortable standing kind of power pedaling position and stuff like that. So many of you know I also have the low side, right? And everybody loves the low side. What's cool is this bike is dedicated single speed, although if I wanted to, I could throw a derailleur on there, right? But I don't, and it has the slotted dropouts, so the whole back end can move, and that's pretty slick. The only thing that's different is that if we come over here, it's going to be dark because I don't have my light set up, but the only thing that's different is the brake is mounted to the frame and this part doesn't move. I do like the setups. Actually, my Esker Hey Duke is set up that way where if you move the dropouts, the brake mounts also move with it, and so everything always stays in alignment. This bike, you always have to monkey with the brake, but aside from that, I mean, it's pretty good. You can set up the chain tension and everything like that. I did add a dropper. It didn't come with a dropper, and I didn't have a dropper in the 2000s, and it's probably one of my favorite inventions for mountain biking, especially coming from a BMX background. I mean, if you see my BMX bikes, the seats are slammed. I love it that I can have this high position pedaling power, can slam the seat, and it's like having a BMX bike all of a sudden, right? It's so cool. It's like such a great bike. So I have a selection of gears. He also mentions that on the Hardtail Party channel. If you ride single speed, you're likely, if you have experience, they're going to have a few different sets of gears, because depending on what trail you're riding, you're going to want to set the gear up for that trail. Super cool. Couple things I've been thinking about updating on this bike is I'm thinking of putting the SLX brakes on here that came off of my Salsa Rustler. These brakes are fine, they just don't have as good of a feel as the Shimano brakes. And I don't need like ridiculous amounts of braking power on this bike. I'm also thinking, this is a 2.8 tire. I'm thinking of maybe going to a 3.0 tire just for a little bit more rollover capability, things like that. Not 100% sure. I already did change out the seat. What's kind of funny is I had a WTB saddle on here that was chromoly rail, right? And if you haven't noticed, but a few videos back, I had a titanium rail WTB saddle on a fat bike. The rail snapped, and WTB wouldn't warranty it. So I'm like, I'm going to put my Ergon saddle on this bike. I really like these saddles. This is titanium, a little bit lighter, so on and so forth. When I took the chromoly saddle off, I noticed one of the rails was bent on the chromoly saddle, the WTB Volt with chromoly saddle. So I'm starting to wonder about the craftsmanship or the quality of the rails. Even though I like the comfort of the WTB Volt and wide, fits me good, I just don't know if I'm happy with the rails, because bent chromoly rail, snapped titanium rail. I haven't had a problem with any of the ergon ones yet. So anyway, I'm kind of going off topic here. Single speeding is awesome. I don't know if it'll ever become as popular as it was in the 2000s, but I remember I was going to bike shows. This was like in the late 90s. I was down at Interbike. I worked at bike shops back then, and I saw, I think it was a Bianchi or something like that, single speed, and I knew there were a couple of locals up here in Minnesota riding single speed, and I think Minnesota, I'm not going to say we were started the trend, but I think we definitely made the trend bigger here in this state. I know the single speed world championships was held here and stuff way back then, but we had a group of hardcore single speed mountain bikers from Minnesota, and I remember in the late 90s I thought, this is crazy. How could you single speed? How could mountain bike? Like, how are you going to get up the hills and so on and so forth? It wasn't until the early 2000s I actually bought a DJ bike. It was a Specialized P2, I believe, and it had gears on it, and I hated the gears. Like, for jumping and stuff, they were slapping around, they would always get jammed, things like that. So I'm like, and it had a horizontal drop, so I'm like, why do I have gears on this bike? So I took the gears off of it and made it a single speed, and I went I remember what happened is the derailleur on my my regular mountain bike got damaged, and my P2 was the only bike I had available. So I'm like, well, I'm going to raise the seat and go ride that bike as a single speed. And I ended up falling in love with single speeding. Like, that was around 2003, I want to say. And that was awesome. And I ended up racing that P2 as single speed and just having a blast on it. And I did really well in that race. It wasn't even a light bike. So that's when I decided to convert my regular mountain bike to single speed, and it stayed that way for about 6-7 years. It was pretty amazing. So single speeding isn't dead. Who knows if it'll ever become as popular as it was. I think we kind of go in these waves right now. Bikes have been getting really expensive, and they're super complex and overly technical, and sometimes that drives people to go, I just want the simple thing. And that's kind of what happened in the late 90s, early 2000s, is that bikes were just getting so complicated and technical at that time, and people were just like, got into this like simplicity mode. And there's something very pure about riding my Surly low side. Every time I ride it, if you've watched my videos, I talk about it. It like brings the kid out in you. It's like being young and riding your Schwinn Stingray or your BMX bike or whatever, and just going wherever. Like, gears, you didn't care about gears, you just shredded on those things. So that's what single speeding is. So if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend trying it out. I will do a video a bit more dedicated on setup. A lot of people talk about knees, so I'm going to talk about technique, things like that. But I just wanted to get this out there after watching the Hardtail Party channel. I'll link that channel or that video right up in the corner right there. Yeah, single speeding's great. I'm not going to get rid of these bikes by any means. Love them. But there are days when I just love riding this bike and just enjoying the simplicity of it all. And I have to say, the dropper post has, like, I wish dropper posts were around 20 years ago. I mean, they are a game changer in this sport. Sweet. I appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace.